Breece Hall, Justin Fields, and Garrett Wilson could all be steals or massive busts in fantasy drafts this season. We dig into the top three storylines for the New York Jets entering 2025 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL, fantasy, and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head over to FanDuel to get started. Today, we are going to discuss the New York Jets and their top three fantasy storylines entering this season. And I mean, they really have three big names, right? It's Justin Fields at quarterback, Breece Hall at running back, and Garrett Wilson at wide receiver. I mean, it's very top heavy here. All three of these guys, you can make an argument for either side that they could be really, really good values in the draft and great fantasy assets this year. Or this offense is just going to struggle in general, like we've seen now for quite a few seasons, right? And they might underperform. So let's start with Breece Hall because he continues to stay high in the rankings despite struggling last year. Is the running back 13 right now in rankings, ahead of guys like James Cook and Kenneth Walker and Alvin Kamara and Joe Mixon, all guys that finished ahead of him last year. He was a running back 17 total points, running back 18 on average last season. But, he was the running back 4 in 2023 and the running back 7 on average in his 2022 shortened rookie season. It's so hard with Breece Hall because it feels like there's so much more he can give and it's just not coming.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he just needed to get out of that offense that was dysfunctional for everybody. I mean, Aaron Rodgers in the end had okay numbers in his one healthy season. They depended a lot on Breece Hall the season before when Rodgers went down immediately with the Achilles injury in week 1. So I thought it might be a reunion in the best case scenario, like a Aaron Jones part 2, because there are some of younger Aaron Jones in the game of Breece Hall. That did not come to fruition. So this offense, we figure it's going to be run heavy for multiple reasons. You have a defensive-minded head coach in Aaron Glenn. You brought over Tanner Engstrand. He used to be on the Lions coaching staff. Their foundation is the running game to take things off the quarterback and throw downfield. So those are some good positive vibes there. The offensive line, that was a little bit of an issue in transition. They tried to piecemeal together for Rodgers. I think it's a little bit better overall. I'm saying it's going to be one of the elite lines of the league, but good enough here. And you have a running quarterback, which can make a difference here in Justin Fields. It also can hurt, right? Fields could take off and run. He could also take away some of the checkdowns that we get from Breece Hall, who's a very good receiver. And in general, some red zone work when we're looking at what Breece Hall can bring to the table. Now, Breece Hall has tended to be a kind of a big play runner, right? He's had some big games. He's exploded that way. He can average like 5 yards a carry easily in a game, but he could also disappear, not get those big runs, be bottled up. And that's what makes them hard from not only season to season, week to week, where to exactly rank this guy. He's got all the talent in the world. I think it's just a matter of how much and what all comes to fruition in this new look offense, right? There's just so many variables coming into play here, including a quarterback who's probably going to look to take off and run wherever he can and be part of it. So I think Breece Hall's okay where he's at. Like, I look at James Cook, we talked about that, maybe being undervalued, but I think Kenneth Walker doesn't give you the same type of upside and durability at this stage with Zach Charbonnet, Alvin Kamara. I think there's a case that can be made there, but Hall is a younger version of him. Joe Mixon now has to deal with Nick Chubb potentially cutting into some of his work. So I think it makes sense. I think he's out of the realm of like the Kyron Williams, who's a little bit more consistent, but I think right here. So I think it's a fair ranking, but as Michelle pointed out, I think it's a boom or bust ranking. You could really get him to shoot up from that spot. I don't think he's going to finish at that RB13. He's probably either going to finish RB6 to 8, or he's going to finish down to 18 to 20. So just be prepared for that. But I think it's more volatile player, but worth that shot, I think, at RB13.
Yeah, the more I look into Breece Hall, like at first you hear Breece Hall and you're like, oh no, I want nothing to do with that, right? Because it just feels like even in his big year in 2023, it didn't feel as good as you wanted it to. He was going super, super high in drafts, and I get it, running back 4 total, but running back 7 on average. And it's actually really interesting looking at that top list in 2023 at the top running backs. Christian McCaffrey was RB1, but then Raheem Mostert RB2 and Travis Etienne RB3 with Breece Hall RB4. It's like the fantasy world and these assets change incredibly quickly, especially at running back. But he's gone down in fantasy points per game each season of his career. But I will say, like, last year when they utilized him, he was perfectly good. In the 11 games, he had at least 12 carries. He averaged 16 fantasy points per game on average. It's just some games they just went away from the running game because they were either, getting killed or whatnot. However, like, do we expect the Jets to be able to stay in a ton of games with Justin Fields? Like, will this offense have it? He should still get a lot of targets, even with Fields being back there and taking off and run. I mean, he had the 3rd most targets on the team last year. Devontae Adams is gone, leaving behind 114 targets he had with the Jets. And Breece Hall already had the 3rd most targets among running backs last season, behind only Alvin Kamara and Devin Achane. And he, like Braylon Allen, we could talk about, but he really played a lot fewer snaps than I remember. It was only 26% of snaps Braylon Allen had. Breece Hall got pretty much all the work around the goal line, just wasn't a lot of goal line work to be had. What do you expect from this Jets offense? Will it look any better than it has the last few seasons?
Well, I think it definitely is going to have a run-oriented look to it. I mean, they don't have a lot of weapons outside of Garrett Wilson. I think, again, if you look at kind of what the Rams have done, it's a lot of, or Lions, I should say, with Jared Goff. They run, and they set it up to throw downfield, and Jared Goff has a lot of favorable throws, right? Because the running game has been dominating, then he uses play action and gets it pretty nicely downfield. So I think that's what they want to do. It makes a lot of sense when you look at the way they're built, where, okay, you have Fields, he can run, you have Hall, but Fields also has a pretty big arm, and he's made it work with the guys, like we mentioned, DJ Moore. So he can get it done with a go-to receiver of Garrett Wilson's ilk. So I think the good news is all these things are going to funnel through Hall. Just there's not a lot of options here. They need to use him as a key weapon. They are going to commit to the run. The bad news is he might lose some checkdowns, and the overall effectiveness of his offense might be limited, and they might change it up at the goal line a little bit with his usage. So there's a lot of pros, there's a lot of cons. I think it meets somewhere in the middle. And I'm going to lean towards Breece Hall has a pretty good season here. I think he's too talented not to do that. And I also have some trust and faith in the Lions' kind of brain trust coming over to make good use of this talent. Where, look, we were going from Nathaniel Hackett and some of the things that they were going on with the Jets and their offensive dysfunction. It can only go up in terms of the play calling for your running back this season.
Yeah, it really can't get worse with goal line opportunities. You might say, well,
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers to Justin Fields. Well, this team, the Jets only had 10 carries, 10 rushing attempts inside their opponent's 5-yard line last year. That's it. It was tied for the fewest in the NFL with the Titans. It's 5 fewer such carries than the 3rd fewest team, which was the Cowboys at 15. Just to compare. So they had 10 rush attempts inside the 5, right? The Eagles had 41 rush attempts inside the 5-yard line last year. The Lions had 38. The Colts, 36. Like 10 carries inside your opponent's 5-yard line near the goal line. That's so, so, so bad. So, I mean, maybe it could be that bad again, but it can't get worse, right? So I don't think he's going to finish much worse than he did last year, which was RB17. He's going as RB13. I do think he has upside. So I'm fine with his ranking. It's a risk, of course, because this offense could be atrocious, or it can be a surprising shock with the new coaches and Justin Fields. We'll see what we can get from this run game. But let's talk about Justin Fields because, he's kind of being overlooked. We know his rushing ability and how he can be just a cheat code for fantasy purposes in that case with the running. So we'll discuss if we think he could be a top 10 fantasy quarterback this season right after a quick break.
All right, this episode, as Michelle told you at the top, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Summer sports are in full swing. That, of course, is baseball. And whether you're all about baseball under lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. We do have all-star game starters, so, of course, you can get some action on that. You have Aaron Judge and Cal Raleigh having an MVP-like season as the Mariners catcher on one side. You got the rising Cubs stars there in Kyle Tucker and Crow Armstrong on the other side. So it should be an exciting all-star game, midsummer classic. You're already following the action before that. So why not make it a little bit more thrilling with baseball and these other sports, golf, soccer, whatever you're into, without football and basketball? With FanDuel, you can get on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. You can chill and look at this. FanDuel fun. It's been great because they have new daily promotions and fun ways to bet every day. It's also easy to use, fast to pay out, makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events on top of the All-Star game and specials like that. And you can check out same-game parlays, ride a bet into the ninth inning. There's so much more, and FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5, only $5 to get $150 in bonus bet if your first bet wins. It's easy to do that. Just open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Michelle, it is time to continue the show looking at the Jets offense, the big three, so to speak. We looked at Breece Hall. Now we're going to look at Justin Fields, the new starting quarterback. Very interesting because Justin Fields came from the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers went from the Jets to the Steelers. So trading places, they actually play each other in week one. So very early in the season, we'll see these teams. So very interesting kind of concept there. But now Justin Fields is an interesting concept in itself. He's been a guy that's producing because of the cheat code. He always seems to be up there when he gets his opportunity. He's a top 12 quarterback when he's getting consistent starts. Looking at his history, QB5 back in 2022 with the Bears, 2023 with the Bears, also QB13. So really amazing that this guy keeps producing no matter what offense, what limitations he might have as a passer. And with Breece Hall and I think Garrett Wilson, Michelle, there could be some more upside for Justin Fields than we think. And there's also nobody that might put him on the bench like a Russell Wilson this year.
Yeah, I know that's really the thing, right? It's if we knew Justin Fields was going to start this whole season and not be benched, I think we would feel much more confident to draft him, right? But the only guy behind him is Tyrod Taylor. I do think it has to get pretty bad for the team to go to Tyrod Taylor because everyone knows once you do that, your season's pretty much shot, right? You have no chance to go make the playoffs or win a playoff game or anything like that with Tyrod Taylor. But the quarterback 14, I do think is too low for him. Last year, he averaged 18.9 points per game in the 6 starts with the Steelers. That ranked 8th among quarterbacks in starts, minimum 2 starts. And the only guys that scored more than him in starts were Lamar, Josh Allen, Burrow, Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, and Jared Goff. And we saw him also have a big fantasy year in 2022 when he was the quarterback 5 on average, a little bit worse in 2023 at quarterback 13. But even last year in those 6 games, like he faced a couple really, really tough defenses with the Broncos and Chargers and still was averaging 19 points per game. Well, not throwing a ton, but it's the rushing. He already had 231 rush yards and 5 rushing touchdowns in just the first 6 weeks of the season. I do think Justin Fields is a plenty good enough option to be your starter each week in one quarterback leagues. Is he going to have some bad games? Sure, but that's going to be most guys, and he's going so late in drafts.
Yeah, he's kind of the bargain basement Josh Allen. We talked about the actual Josh Allen because then you look up, he doesn't have a lot of weapons. He's not throwing a bunch. Then you look at his numbers. Oh, wait, his numbers are all looking good. Yeah, he's bargain basement because he's not nearly as good. But he is a guy that you look at, he knows how to compile. And compiling is very important and just puts up numbers and finds a way. And again, he's a pretty good touchdown scorer when he's rushing. So if you're in great shape. Think about it. If you go to, say, 60 yards rushing and a touchdown, right? You already got 12 points on the board, and you don't have to do anything passing. Just hold on to the ball, protect it, and you're still going to have a decent, like even a bad fantasy game of 12 points. you don't have to do much more to get beyond that, right? You can throw for 200 yards and you're in business here, right? So I just think that's your 20 points right there. So when you look at that, I mean, it's very interesting that he has to do very little to be successful in this offense because of that rushing. And again, if you get almost a whole extra touchdown, basically the equivalent is 60 yards, that's going to boost your scoring immediately because you're already a third of the way home for starter viability, right? When you're looking at, if you're looking at, especially at the 4 points per passing touchdown leagues, because he gets the rushing touchdowns, what gets you basically an extra passing touchdown. So there's all kinds of things that you like about Justin Fields. I think he's an awesome guy to have in 2 QB and Superflex leagues. Like, I want to target him. I want him as my second QB in those formats. And in single formats, deep leagues, I think you can do a lot worse. I mean, he's right on the cusp here. Deep league starter. I'd be very happy with that. If I had to wait around and get him at QB 14, there's a 14 team league I'm in, I'd be very content with that. Just plug and play him every week. I mean, I think also we have to trust this play calling group. Like, we had some dysfunction in Chicago. We had some there in Pittsburgh a little bit trying to figure out who the quarterback was. But again, that Lions offense, the history with Ben Johnson connection with Engstrand, I totally trust that they're going to make the best use of Justin Fields' talents this season.
I think so as well. And he just has a lot of big games too. I mean, 13 games with at least 22 points scored over the last 3 seasons. And again, he only started 6 games last year. That's the 8th most games with that many points among quarterbacks. Justin Herbert has 1 more game than Justin Fields. Patrick Mahomes only has 3 more. And those guys started way more games than Justin Fields over these 3 seasons. So he gives you really high potential in any given week. He gives you high potential in the season. And he's going well behind guys like Bo Nix and Kyler Murray. And like, I would much rather take a shot on Justin Fields than go with Kyler Murray. Like, I think Kyler Murray might be like my last choice at his current draft cost, right? And then kind of same thing with Bo Nix. I just think he's going way too high in drafts. I would much rather wait on Justin Fields than take either of those 2 guys.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the comments on our Broncos episode. We're not hating on Bo Nix. I think he's a good reality quarterback. I just
You're
don't
hating
think
on
he has
his
a.
fantasy draft cost.
Yeah. He's a compiler to some degree, but Justin Fields is a better compiler. And with Kyler Murray, if he chooses not to run as much, that's not going to help his value either. So Fields is willing to run. That's what I like about him, right? He's willing. He knows what he is, right? He knows where his bread is buttered at this point. He's going to get those numbers as a passer with a guy like Garrett Wilson. We'll talk about him in our final segment, but there's a little bit more confidence there that in that connection than the Knicks, say Cortland Sutton or Kyler Murray with Marvin Harrison Jr. Then a couple other guys that came up here that are similar. It's very interesting, right? Because it's a guy that was in the style of offense, Jared Goff or Caleb Williams. Where are you going there with those choices?
That's a tough one, right? Especially the Caleb Williams versus Justin Fields, which is funny because this is what the
Yeah.
Bears had to decide for themselves. And they are going so close in drafts, about 5 spots separated in overall draft position right now. Caleb Williams with Ben Johnson obviously sounds much more enticing. And I do think Caleb Williams has that top 5 upside with Fields. I think it's more top 10 with the Jets. I think I lean Caleb Williams. I think Fields is safer to not destroy you because of the rushing. But Caleb Williams just has that upside. I think I'm leaning that way.
Yeah, he has enough passing weapons. Plus, he can run enough and score enough.
And you don't have to worry about Caleb Williams getting benched, right?
No, he's not going to get benched. I mean, Justin Fields, we'll see. I don't know. I think they'll do a full evaluation of Justin Fields as long as they can. But if it's a total disaster, then they're going to have to just say, we need to play some respectable football down the stretch here as we transition and try to figure out who our next quarterback will be. So, again, I like Caleb Williams over Justin Fields. But in terms of Bo Nix, Kyler Murray, Jared Goff, I'm going Justin Fields all the way on any of those situations. Better value, better cheat code, all of the above.
Yep, I'm with you on all of that. Now we have to figure out, can Garrett Wilson have a great season with Justin Fields? I feel like Garrett Wilson's career has gone very similar to how DJ Moore's career went early on. And then he had his big blow up year with the year he was with Justin Fields. So we'll see if Garrett Wilson can do the same thing. Do we believe that can happen? We'll discuss right after a quick break. All right, let's finish up today's show. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stop. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Garrett Wilson right now is sitting at the wide receiver 15 in consensus rankings. He was the wide receiver 11 overall last year, but a massive difference to his average scoring. So wide receiver 23 in points per game last season at 11.9 points per game. That's actually only 0.06 more points per game than what Cooper Kupp averaged last year. I thought that was pretty shocking. And then in 2023, it was terrible at wide receiver 40 on average. In 2022, wide receiver 31 on average. That was his rookie season. So he increased his fantasy points a bit last year. He had a career high 7 receiving touchdowns. Pretty much the yardage has been almost identical though in each year of his career. So we know he gets so many targets. We know he's going to get so many targets, but will that matter? Right? Because it hasn't really mattered up to this point.
In some ways, the limitations of Justin Fields are actually helping Garrett Wilson because I think Aaron Rodgers, we know he's a bit of a fickle guy with his targets. It took a while for them to get on the same page and really trust Garrett Wilson. He was trying to work in Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard and all his old cronies from Green Bay that he likes. But look, Justin Fields might be like, he's the best receiver. Throw to this receiver. Throw to him often. Keep throwing to him. So I think he's going to do that, right? I mean, it's almost like his limitations, like, oh, he's not going to be able to cerebrally read the field and like, I'm going to flip it around to everybody and throw it, right? Like Aaron Rodgers, look, he comes with a little bit of an arrogant streak, right? That I'm going to push the ball to whoever I want to. Doesn't matter if they're covered, whatever's going to happen. You know they're going to say, hey, Justin, you're going to protect the ball as much as possible. But to do that, you got to throw to Garrett Wilson a lot because he's going to get open for him. Trust him. He's your best receiver. So I think this relationship could actually work. And we did see that with, I think the Fields DJ Moore comparison is fantastic because it's type of receiver, right? DJ Moore can get testy, have some issues with his quarterback from time to time, right? I think those things happen a lot with DJ Moore. So I think Wilson, again, he is such an amazing talent that they need to work to get the ball. And you look at the Lions, they did that with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you have Engstrand here, Glenn. They're going to say, get the ball in this guy's hand. So I think it's in a good position. I actually feel better about him than Breece Hall because I think there's less volatility. I think he's going to get the targets. He's going to get like the favoritism from Fields as a go-to guy. That's going to add up to numbers we're looking for. So I do think this is a pretty good value at wide receiver 15.
Yeah, when you look at the competition for targets, I mean, Josh Reynolds, Alan Lazard, Malachi Corley, maybe Arian Smith, who they took in the 4th round this year. They have a rookie tight end that's, penciled in as the starter right now, 2nd round pick Mason Taylor. But Garrett Wilson should be absolutely peppered with targets like he's always been. But like I mentioned, it hasn't really turned into the fantasy points. There's been 7 players with at least 425 targets over the last 3 seasons. And all of them, except for Garrett Wilson, has averaged at least 14.5 points per game during that span, while Garrett Wilson's at 10.6. So a good 4 points per game, fewer than any of these other players that are just massive target volume guys. But we brought up the Justin Fields and what he did with DJ Moore. DJ Moore was the only target there for Fields, and he peppered him with targets, and it was by far DJ Moore's best year of his career. He finishes the wide receiver 6 in fantasy that season at 14 points per game. And prior to that, he was always a guy that scored around 9 to 12 points per game in any given season. So just like how Garrett Wilson is right now. So that does give me hope for Garrett Wilson. But the real question here is, how do we feel about his wide receiver 15 rank? Are you comfortable with that cost?
Yeah, I think that's fair because I think he's going to potentially be. I mean, you just talked about what DJ Moore did. I mean, he finished as a wide receiver 1 all around. I mean, when you look at however the scoring was. So I think you're going to get a value of at least 5 to 6 spots here, of where you take him. So again, talent, we always forget that talent is the number one driver. He's had a lot of talent. He's just had a lot of bad luck, right? Like quarterback dysfunction, offensive play caller dysfunction. I think the functionality of the Jets is going to go a long way, not just with Wilson, with Fields, with Hall. So just throw out all the stuff that we've seen before, right? That was an absolute mess. I think they're going to do well in terms of keeping it simple. That's what we want, right? Keep it simple. Some of these teams get too complicated with too many guys, but I think just having, okay, we're going to go to Wilson, we're going to go to Hall as much as possible. That's great for fantasy, right? And a quarterback that says, I'm going to take off and run, I'm going to put the hands in the ball or the ball in the hands of the playmaker, and we're going to roll with it, like, and just go from there. So I think there's some things, again, I'm going to trust the Lions people here. That's why they made the move. And again, I think he's one of the brighter play caller or minds of this league. So Engstrand, I think, will really push this team forward this season. And look, the three principal weapons are going to be the big beneficiaries of that.
So to finish up today's episode, if you had to take one of these guys at their cost, are you going with Breece Hall, Justin Fields, or Garrett Wilson?
That's a good question. I think for the upside, I'm going Garrett Wilson. I think Fields, again, there's a lot of guys that we're not sure how the top 12 is going to play out at quarterback, and he could end up right at 13 or 14 where he's at. But I think Wilson, in terms of jumping where he's at, I think he has the best shot of doing that versus Hall or Fields.
Yeah, I think I've kind of talked myself into liking all of these guys' cost. Yeah, I guess I'll see how the draft goes, but I wasn't expecting to, be targeting any of them, but I will, like, now after doing this and digging into their numbers a bit more, I do think I'll have at least one of them on many of my teams. So very interesting. The Jets could be a fun offense this year or stink, but I'm leaning towards more that
they'll be more fun. They have to be. I wouldn't say they were fun with Aaron Rodgers. Like, he was probably miserable for everyone there. So at least I think you'll see maybe just Hall and Wilson. Some of these guys had that weight lifted off them, and that alone is going to help them produce a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So that will be it for today's show. We hope you all have the best 4th of July weekend. Enjoy, have fun, be safe, please. And we will be back on Monday. Bye, y'all.